Welcome to the Explainer. All right, let's jump right in. Today we're digging into a pretty critical analysis of the Indian economy, looking at some really serious concerns that have been raised just as the national budget is about to be unveiled. And the analysis we're examining today kicks off with this really powerful statement. It kind of sets the tone for the whole thing, suggesting that the official story we're hearing about India's economy, well, it might not be the whole story.
So, what is the full story then? That's the big question we're exploring here. We're going to peel back the layers of this particular analysis and see exactly what picture it paints, starting with what it calls the most obvious problem.
So, first up, the analysis points to a huge issue with tax collections. Specifically, we're talking about the goods and services tax, the GST. This is pretty much the financial lifeblood for both the central government and all the state governments.
Now, you might think a drop in tax revenue is just a problem for the central government, but the source argues it's actually a massive crisis for India's states. And why is that? Well, because once GST came in, states were left with very few ways to raise their own money.
And that squeeze on tax money, well, it leads us right here to the financial health of the states. The claim being made in this analysis is pretty stark. It says that many of them are getting dangerously close to a breaking point.
If you think about it, from a state's perspective, their hands are kind of tied. Their income is limited to their share of GST, some fuel taxes, and money they get back from the center. At the same time, they're often funding expensive social programs. It's a recipe for a huge financial squeeze. And to put some real numbers on this, the analysis uses the example of Madhya Pradesh. Get this, it reportedly has a debt of almost 5 lakh crore rupees, but its own annual revenue, just over 1 lakh crore. That is a staggering almost 5-to-1 gap.
And look, the argument here is that this isn't just one isolated case. The claim is that this kind of financial instability is widespread, with many states barely able to make the interest payments on the loans they already have. This is a really key part of the larger economic picture being presented.
Okay, so this is where the analysis gets really interesting. It starts to frame this whole situation as a story of just a handful of states basically funding the rest of the entire nation. It paints a picture of a really unequal economic engine.
The argument goes that a small group of about 8 or 9 states, mostly in the south and west, places like Maharashtra, Gujarat, and the southern states, are generating most of the wealth that supports the rest of the country. Let's look at the numbers used to back this up.
This table, based on the sources figures, is pretty eye-opening. It shows that for every 1 rupee a state like Bihar contributes in central taxes, it gets back over 7 rupees. This is the system that the source describes as robbing Peter to pay Paul, where wealth is effectively moved from a few high-performing states to many of the others.
All of this, the shrinking taxes, the struggling states, it all builds up to what the analysis calls the main event, a national debt situation that it describes as an unprecedented and inescapable trap for the central government itself.
So, according to the source, before COVID, the government used to borrow around 7 or 8 lakh crore rupees a year. Then the pandemic hit and boom, it exploded to 20 lakh crore. And even now, it stayed incredibly high.
For this current fiscal year, the government is on track to borrow this unbelievable amount, about 15 lakh crore rupees. Just try to keep that number in your head for a second.
Because, and this is the absolute kicker in the analysis, the interest payment on all of India's past debt for this exact same year is, you guessed it, also around 15 lakh crore rupees. The two numbers are almost identical.
And that, right there, is the debt trap in a nutshell. It's wild. For the first time, according to this source, nearly every new rupee the government borrows is immediately eaten up by the interest on old loans. This leaves practically nothing for new development, for infrastructure, for services. It's exactly like taking out a new credit card just to pay the interest on your old one.
So you might ask, why not just default on the debt? Well, the source notes that the government can't really do that. If it did, international agencies would likely downgrade its credit rating to junk. That would scare off foreign investors and make it pretty much impossible to get new loans from anywhere.
Okay, so we've been talking about these huge, frankly mind-boggling numbers. But the real question is, why does any of this matter to you? To the average person? How does it actually impact daily life?
It's really a domino effect. When all the money is being spent just to pay off debt, there's obviously less money for everything else. That means the budgets for social programs, for building roads, for public services that we all rely on, they all get squeezed.
And the analysis connects this financial pressure to very real-world outcomes. It points to things like cuts in rural employment programs, layoffs happening even at major companies like TCS, crumbling city infrastructure like sewage and roads, and a bigger shift toward a less secure, gig worker economy.
To wrap it all up, the source leaves us with this powerful metaphor. It suggests that the economy is like someone wearing a fancy coat on the outside, looking prosperous, but underneath, the vest is completely torn. That, the source says, is the real state of things.
And so, this whole analysis leaves us with a really provocative question, especially as the new budget is unveiled. Is it going to address these deep, foundational problems, or will it just focus on patching up the coat for appearances? This is the crucial question this analysis wants us to think about for the country's economic future.